Welcome to this week's Cirak Live, your weekly home for stillness, clarity, and honest answers in real time. The topic for today is one that is pretty topical, but it's also applicable for all of time, all of humanity, everything that's ever existed, but especially in these times, there's a deeper reflection that we're being called to engage with. Today's topic is sacred leadership. And while that at first may seem possibly just extends to people that we've anointed or elected or not elected for as leaders, but it's actually a deeply personal topic because the hero's journey is a personal one. This is the formula that every movie, every script, every good novel is based on, that there's an unconscious would-be hero and something happens to this person. Usually it's loss or tragedy or trauma of some sort. In some way or fashion, life shapes them to wake up from their slumber and then take charge of their destiny, step into their power, and become the hero of their own journey. And this is the pivot point in everyone's life. And the conditions that we have today globally is especially relevant because we're being asked to look at our own leadership within our own lives, within our own circle, within our own friends and family, and within ourselves, to see what really resonates and what is truthful to ourselves, because we're surrounded by so much debate, so much opinion, so much confusion, so much chaos, so much inversion, that the tendency might be to just run away and turn a blind eye. But unfortunately, that doesn't help anyone, and it doesn't help you. When we turn a blind eye to ourselves, to our own truth, we suffer, the people around us suffer. Ultimately, consciousness suffers because we're not investing in ourselves to bring light to the darkness. So I have a chapter today from my upcoming book, God is a Conservative, that I want to read to you and that we will review point by point in a more live, engaged discourse. Hello, Ana Perez. Nice to see you. And feel free to post any questions, as always, into the chat. I'll answer it whenever the flow takes me there. And if you're really interested, you can also come online and onto stage, and then I can help you there. If you're having a bad connection, sorry, that's outside of my reach, but I hope it will buffer and it will connect with you more clearly. You can always watch a recording of this in higher definition afterwards. I usually publish it within an hour. It winds up on YouTube, and also if you're a member of Cirak Live, you have access to the entire archive of everything I've ever done in there. All right. Let's begin. Sacred leadership. Leadership, in its most sacred form, does not gather attention, seek admiration, or draw energy toward the individual who carries it. The true leader disappears behind the work. What remains visible is not personality, charisma, or self-importance, but the energy and order with which they tend to their duties. When you lead with God consciousness, you don't stand in front of others. You don't stand above them. You carry the weight of responsibility that they cannot yet hold. Leadership is not a choice nor a privilege. You are called to it because you've done the inner work. I often talk about how you do not just work on yourself, but to clear the space around you, to clear your lineage, to free the people that came before, your ancestors, your parents, all the stuckness, all the unresolved energy. That is also what you're clearing. Most of what you clear is the inherited stuff. It might be some experiences from this lifetime, but most of our issues are the unlived life of our parents and their parents and so on. So eventually you clear not just your own energy, but you clear the collective energy field. And that makes you automatically a leader. It puts you into the position where you have done the work, and it's not easy, but that's what we're here for. And there's a clarity to that. There's an authenticity to that, that others can feel inspired by, and others will gravitate towards when and if they're ready. It's not something that can be forced on anyone. No one could force it on me for a long time. I was surrounded by many wonderful people who had great practices and were into spirituality and meditation. And I grew up in a home with deep devotion and prayer and church going. And it didn't really reach me the way it has until much later. So everyone has their own timing. It sinks in when it needs to sink in. And so there's no rush. There's no need to judge yourselves, judge each other, to force what we think is right and truthful onto anyone. You can make an offering, as always, but it's up to the person to accept it. Anyone who has perhaps taught or mentored in any capacity will have experienced this. This is one of the first lessons you learn as a teacher, is that you're just sowing seeds. And just is not meant to diminish that, but it's meant to create the type of space and healthy distance and relationship towards the students who will absorb on their own time. If you talk in rhetoric or in condescension, that only leads to resistance and defense. That's not how people can be touched and reached. So just making an offering of presence and information and being yourself. Those who are ready will absorb. Those who see the light in you, because perhaps within themselves, they've recognized a glimmer of it, they will gravitate towards you anyway, naturally. If you're a parent or a boss or in other leadership roles and responsibilities, people will come to you. You don't have to seek them out. So from a spiritual perspective, you become your own leader first before you may apply that type of that connectedness to yourself in external leadership positions. So relationship with self always comes first, and then that's an inner job. And then the external, then you can apply yourself a certain way, and that could look any particular way. But the inner work comes first. And there you see also, when you hear that the outer is always a reflection of the inner, is that you cannot create something in your environment on the outside that you yourself have not attained. A state cannot be promoted that you don't inhabit yourself. So you can't fake that either, because people will pick that up. It's instantly noticeable when somebody speaks from authenticity and flow and connectedness and from true experience and depth, or if they're, maybe not quite there yet, or a certain level, that's okay too. But the authenticity of where one is at a particular station in life, and not to pretend that one is ever complete and that the work is finished. That's what makes a person authentic. I was also very introverted and didn't really want attention when I first started talking. And my first book, I didn't want to put my name on, or I didn't even want to promote. I wanted the message to speak for itself. And going out into the world does require connecting with people. And that is the story behind what motivated what you created, be it a book or artwork or music, or a company or whatever motivated you, that is important, and that creates an energy that permeates the form that we create. So that does require you to align yourself with a way of being public, honestly, sharing your story without restraint, without fear of judgment, without thinking, what will others think? In my writing retreats, many people, it's a very common um, dilemma amongst writers, a common creative block is the fear of what others will think, especially family and friends. Very often the things that inspire us to write are autobiographical in nature, or they're about people that you know, or about experiences that you've had, or jobs that you've held, and it starts to block you from writing freely. Is the fear that somebody might find out, and what will they think of you then? So being authentic in the public eyes it's its own process, and it all comes back to discovering the honesty with your own self, with your relationship to yourself. And that's where it all emanates from, and that's where the core of the work, what it consists of. And the rest is just the world of form, but everything flows from within. All right. Next paragraph. For most leaders in the modern age, leadership is about visibility. Titles, platforms, influence, and voice have replaced the older understanding of leadership as inner capacity, moral clarity, and spiritual gravity. Not that it was always realized in the past, but the compass existed. Somewhere along the way, however, we began to believe that the leader is the one who shines brightest, speaks loudest, or stands at the highest point in the room. From a spiritual perspective, however, the more awakened a being becomes, the less they need to generate shine, as they do so naturally from the depths of their authenticity and connection to Source. The more aligned they are, the less they need to be seen as brightness of the inner light that speaks for themselves. I remember in my lifetime still very much an era where an effort was made to at least maintain neutrality, to present multiple perspectives, to steer clear of just personal opinion or war of what anybody thinks and pitting people against each other. It wasn't that long ago, but it's really the bottom has dropped out of that type of journalism and that type of leadership. And as the text says, the inner light speaks for itself. One of my favorite exercises to do with my students back in the higher education days was to give them a short phrase, something like, "I'll call you right back," and have them all write down on a piece of paper what that means to them. And if there were 30 students, there would be 30 different interpretations. And they varied greatly, not even close. Oh, maybe they'll call me back in 2 minutes versus 4. No, they varied. I'm not being respected. They have better things to do. I'm not worth their time. A lot of self-worth reflections. He's never going to call me back. Like it's remarkable how we interpret even the smallest phrases, smallest words through our own unique particular lens. And then we realize through simple exercises like this that there is no objective truth. Ultimately, everyone is experiencing themselves, experiencing their reality. This is why you can give a jury in a trial the same evidence sometimes as obvious as it could possibly be, and the jury might be deadlocked or even go into the less obvious direction. And because it isn't obvious to everyone, everyone has their own filters and their own stories attached to every piece of information. So what I call the objective reality is once you work through the triggers and the conditioned layers and the programming and the inherited stuff, what remains, the objective reality, almost no one, if almost no one lives in it. Everyone has a bit of humanness left, even at the highest levels of mindfulness and meditation and spirituality and prayer. There's still a human, a little human in us who's going to interpret things, who might feel triggered or offended or become defensive or go on the counter. And the main difference is that a person who's done the inner work will notice that. They will witness the little human getting irritated and feeling a certain way. And the noticing keeps you from identifying with it. As long as you're noticing it, then you're not it. So the little human can say and scream and revolt and rebel and exert him or herself as much as possible, as much as they want. But when you live from awareness, it doesn't get to you. It doesn't take you over. You don't get lost in thought. You don't go down the rabbit hole of stories and emotions and of what this might be, what it all means. And we spend most of our day, when we haven't done the inner work, we spend most of our day lost in these types of thoughts. The lens of interpretation of whatever just happened, even the littlest thing, somebody just cut you off in traffic, or you can't find your keys to the car, now you're going to be late. Whatever it is, it can consume us when we believe those thoughts. That little thought of annoyance attracts more thoughts of annoyance, and there's a whole stream of annoyance that then awakes, and that keeps us occupied for hours. And that's not a good way to live your life, to make use of this time. Most of our life can pass us by, and we're not here to enjoy the beautiful sunset, the miracle of a blue sky with puffy white clouds on it. I mean, it's crazy. The greenery, the nature inhaling and exhaling in its powerful, in the most powerful way. Just the ingenuity of humans as well, what they've created, the inventions, the structure, each other, that we exist, ourselves, that there's trillions of cells that somehow have received instructions to come together and make you, your personality, your traits, your talents, your karma. All of that is just unbelievable. The whole thing is so beyond the mind. And if we just spend a little time, a little connection with that miracle, then it infuses our life with light and an ease and a perspective. And we don't take ourselves so seriously anymore. We don't take situations as too dramatic. Whatever happens, happens. Life continues. Some things are pleasant, some things are unpleasant. There's no need to force something that's already happened to be different. Thank you, Polly. All right. It's only the insecure leader who needs the world to know who is leading. If you just look out there into the world, from your workplace to even family and certainly into politics and at the global scale, you can see who needs to be seen for self-validation. Inside everyone, no matter how rich or powerful or influential they may be, there's still a little kid, little child that perhaps experienced abandonment, perhaps experienced a lack of love, that perhaps experienced a lack of self-worth. And that carries through. And when you spend your entire life living in your head, pursuing outcomes, chasing goals, status, prestige, so that you can buy stuff and consume more, and don't spend enough time connecting to source and the miracle and the light and the observation of yourself through the witness state, then you become really identified with form, with your body and your persona and the image that you've created. And your life will be a roller coaster, up and down, because the environment always changes, and you're at the mercy of your environment for how you feel. And that's just an unstable way. So that then leads to wanting to control everything, to be seen in the highest light, to please, so that you can feel good about yourself. But it's a never-ending battle. You'll never win that fight, because it only exists at the level of surface. It only exists at the level of form, of people, places, and things trying to assert themselves, trying to find truth in the material realm, permanence, permanent happiness in the physical. And that's not where it is to be found. The world is a living, breathing organism. It is constantly changing and evolving and shifting and expanding and collapsing. There's nowhere where we can hang on, cling to something, make it stand still, and build our foundation of that which keeps us happy on that. Doesn't exist. Everyone tries. Eventually, everyone realizes that's not how it's done. The peace and the happiness and the permanent sense of self and joy and purpose that we're all seeking is not found in the external. It's just not there. You can find temporary happiness, temporary fulfillment. You can achieve something that's great, wonderful. You should celebrate it. You can set goals and apply your skills, apply your experience. No one's saying anything against that. But if you're too attached to the outcome, if you're too attached to being seen a particular way, then life becomes suffering. Your achievement immediately gives over to the fear of loss when you start feeling it fade. And then you're clinging and trying to control again, and you barely had a breather of relief, and now you're back to the old chase. Sacred leadership is the art of demonstrating power without being owned by it. That's what we just talked about. The root motivation is not ambition, not necessity, the recognition, but the recognition that something must be done in order to honor universal integrity. While mental ambition wonders, how far can I go? How far can I take this? Your conscience asks, what must I protect? What should I preserve? What wants to be expressed here? It's not an injection of self into the situation, but a recognition of what the situation wants to be. A true leader never says, follow me. A true leader says, let's do the right thing, even if no one knows who did it. We all have an imprint of this genuineness, this authenticity, this art of living the right way inside of us. Everyone. All my years of doing private sessions and groups and retreats, never come across anyone who couldn't connect to their higher self, who couldn't, no matter how complicated their life was, if they referenced their inner wisdom, who didn't know that this or that way is the right way to go about it, that the solution is found not through forcing, not through controlling, not through looping through sadness and self diminishment, but rather simply by surrendering to your inner voice, asking for help, asking for support, be it through guides, be it through prayer. There was a guy in the 80s, I think his name was Brian Tracy, who more in the mainstream promoted a miraculous new way to get any answer that you are have a question about. And his method was sitting in stillness for half an hour. And he said, around the 25 minute mark, you'll be amazed, whatever question you have put out there, the answer will come to you. So those of us who are more well-versed and experienced in meditation and mindfulness and have gone to some retreats and silent camps and so forth, chuckle at this, but to the mainstream, this was and continues to is a big revelation. This concept, this idea that you could just sit in stillness and the answer will come to you. This is where God consciousness comes in. If the answer is dependent on you trying to figure it out with your head, you're going to run into blocks and self-doubt and second guessing and frustration and exhaustion and choice overload and paralysis and analysis. It just keeps going. Mind is not suited to figure out truth and what's right for you. It's not meant to help you navigate a situation. It can gather information, it can execute once you have a plan, but the plan has to come from somewhere else. And even then, the plan has to be flexible. Plan is only meant to initiate movement, to get you going, to start engaging with life. And then from there, co-creation happens. From there, you start to see things that you couldn't have imagined. You start to see possibilities that you can't sit on a couch and just come up with, that only flow from the doing when you engage in a conscious way with enough openness to include uncertainty, to be comfortable with the unknown. That's when magic happens. And that's when really good ideas come to us. What we know is the past. It's stale. It's already been defined. There's nothing new in that. There's no aliveness in that. That can only come from the unknown, the unpredictable, the unexpected. That's where newness, aliveness flows from. So if you want to keep your life fresh, tap into the unknown, tap into the discomfort that comes with that, knowing that the discomfort is just your mind freaking out because it can't control something. But you are not your mind. You're the awareness of the mind, of the thoughts, of the feelings and sensations. That is your true self. So you can hold space for the mind, which is just trying to keep us safe. It's trying to do its job. But it freaks out when confronted with something it doesn't know, something it cannot control. You're never going to get rid of that. Even after 25 years of meditation, if you're a Zen master, you're still going to have some anxious thoughts from time to time, some fearful ideas or projections. You will engage stages of your life and encounter situations you hadn't before. The challenge of evolution never ends. But what can prepare you for anything that has yet to come is your presence, your ability to stay in your awareness as things happen. That is what is being the center, in the eye of the storm, as the chaos around us engulfs those who aren't present, who are not in their awareness. And you can look out into the world and see this very clearly. Who is being engulfed? Who is participating in the noise? Who is identified with their opinions? Who needs to be seen? And those who can witness it, those who can hold their space, express their needs, but without attachment to any outcome. They can pursue and create from a place that isn't so self-attached, but rather is a co-creative place, something that's wanting to come through them. And they are part of that dance. It's a very different experience when you encounter those people. They're calm, nothing is important enough to unsettle them. They don't lose the equanimity of their mind. There's no need to raise your voice or shout or convince or condemn. You can tell very quickly when somebody is in their head and they live from their mind versus living from God consciousness, from connection to source, to spirit, to a greater, higher version of oneself, not the little human, but the higher self, the higher truth, intuition, heart space. And unfortunately, those qualities have been diminished more and more over time. There's an addiction to progress and technology, making us feel like that is what moves us forward. So much doing, working long, crazy hours and jobs to afford homes and cars and stuff to build a self-image and then create status and reputation, prestige, and then upholding that again, and then fixing the homes when they fall into disrepair. You can become absorbed by all of that very easily, very quickly. But you can do all of that also with awareness, from a place of intention, true consciousness. And that consciousness will inform you whether you should be doing this or not. And very likely, yes, you will drop many of the activities that you're currently engaged in with greater self-awareness, because it's your compass, your inner radar that is saying, this isn't of integrity, this isn't of the highest light, this isn't worth my time, not from a place of frustration, not from a place of self-diminishment, from a place of truth and clarity and conscience. Am I contributing to the universe a frequency that I want to leave behind? That becomes the leading question. Not how can I gain more? How can I spread my reach, my influence? How can I add more to myself, to my portfolio, to what I already have? That path is an endless loop. It's never enough. But the inner guidance, doing from a place of presence, that will tell you very quickly when enough is enough, when you've achieved what wants to be expressed, when the formless that is flowing through you has achieved its perfection, not what you want it to be, but what it wants to be. That feels very different, and your life, consequently, will look very different. Mind-based leadership constantly builds identity through jockeying for position. Sacred leadership removes identity through the dedication of being of service. The ego wants the role and clings to it, seeking to expand it. The soul accepts the transparency and accountability as long as there is the calling. A leader who lives in their head becomes the focal point. A leader led by spirit sees themselves as an instrument. There's no glory in being the instrument, only loyalty to doing the work of truth. There's a profound statement to this that is often a misconception of those who get into spirituality and mindfulness and start meditating, this idea that you're just going to be in a state of bliss, that your life is going to just magically get easy and no problems and abundance, and everything just happens with flow. And there is some truth to that, of course. Your life simplifies. You no longer fret about things that happen and linger and amplify them and make them worse. But there's still the reality of what happens. And some things are pleasant and some things are unpleasant. Some things are worth celebrating, some things are worth forgetting. So you're still going to have to contend with that. The difference is with awareness, you see it clearly. You see the world clearly. You see other people's degrees of awareness clearly. You will quickly get into a situation where you find yourself isolated and lonely and questioning whether the awakening and the inner work, the spirituality is even worth it, because now you see how clearly misaligned the world is, most of it. And you even see the plight of the human journey of self-realization, that no one is complete by virtue of being human. No one is uh, near the finish line. There is an endless stream of work that needs to be done now and forever. And this idea that somehow, that we have in the back of our mind, that somehow there is an end point, a finish line, a place where we can finally just rest and be happy, it just doesn't exist. It doesn't exist from the human perspective, but from the soul perspective, it's not necessary for that to be. From the soul's perspective, if you inhabit your essence, you are continuously practicing to be at a higher frequency, to cultivate greater presence, to shine brighter. There are no beginnings and endings. There's no one that you need to impress. There's nothing you need to prove. It's just a state of frequency that you want to elevate to the highest possible. And that takes you in the direction of reuniting and returning to source. So even as a soul, there's still a fragmentation. You're an expression of the greater consciousness, but still some identity attached to that. That's necessary to give it shape, to give it form. But there comes a point where you dissolve that, and that's what we're working towards, where we melt and dissolve back into the ocean, where our awareness of ourselves is no longer limited to who we think we are. And that is a long way towards that point. Right now we're in this dimension dealing with our name, our story, our hopes and dreams, our career, our belongings, our partnerships, our creativity of wanting to make something of this place, of our time here. This is a far cry from what I just talked about, the total dissolution of self. And the focus should be on what we have to deal with right now, right here, because that's why we're here. The other stuff will come. And there is a type of frustration and sadness in that we are limited right here. You can feel your limitation of being in the body, of being a spirit that's having a human experience. And with greater awareness, you start to see that and feel that. And then that becomes the next challenge that presents you with the goal of acceptance. Accepting all of that will keep elevating you. Accepting who you are, where you are, moves us forward. It gets us unstuck, and the energy starts flowing. And from there, you don't know what's going to happen next, nor do you want to, but then you're in the flow. That's the only place you want to be, that gap, that space before the formless takes shape, before the unknown becomes known and defined, before the intangible is felt. In that place, that gap, that space, that is where our evolution takes place. And if we're stuck, then that's where it's pointing us to. All right. The work is always the calling for divine order behind the form. Coherence, justice, harmony, clarity, alignment. The immature leader leads people. The mature leader facilitates the unfolding of God consciousness. Their loyalty is not to the special interests, lobbyists, or the groupthink flavor of the day. It's not to the outcome of the next election. It's to the principle that governs the field. If their party is wrong, they will stand alone. If truth requires rebuilding, they will not save the structures. If integrity requires silence, they will not speak just to appease others. Sacred leaders are not always liked because they're not trying to be. There's a real challenge in stepping into your power and being the light that you are and aligning with your conscience, and then aligning that, making sense of the rest of the world that isn't. Again, acceptance will take you there, but there's a practical reality to how do you manage your life then as you become more aware. It's rare to find others. Those of us who are here can see how limited our range, our circle is to find someone with whom we can truly discuss these things and exchange our experiences with and share in a way that is open and non-defensive and unfearful of being judged. It's a rare place. And that is the purpose of this weekly stream, is to provide that space. But out there, it's rare. And if you don't come back to it regularly, then something inside starts to shrivel, something inside starts to harden. We get pulled into the harshness of the world and the limiting beliefs and the fear. It's a mind-made, mind-driven, fear-driven environment out there. And if we spend all our time focused on that, then we start to take that on. That energy seeps into us. So a daily practice at the very least, maybe one or two confidants around you, people that you can ring up or message, even just a quick exchange every day, super helpful. Showing up here once a week to do a deep dive, going to a retreat once a year. Speaking of which, if you haven't seen already, there's our India retreat that is coming up. You can visit by going to this domain. And I am proud to say that I was a retreat junkie once, and I was going to these events continuously, one after another. And of course, the seeking has to end eventually, but it does help to expose yourself to this energy. And ideally, you attend events where it's not about being more of the image, being more of, hey, look where I am, sending those selfies out to let everyone know how amazing your life is. But attending events that reinforce just being, just stillness, no longer seeking, because if you're running after some idea of enlightenment, it's no different than chasing after a promotion or the goal of buying a fancy car. Maybe a little better, but not by much. Continuing on. Divine order is not imposed order or authoritarian control, but the natural order that appears when truth is not manipulated. So there's an inherent order in life that appears when you stop controlling it. And that's a paradox to the mind. The mind thinks you have to make it happen. It thinks you have to cling to things and rearrange things and keep them in place and push and shove and fight and uh, and fend for yourself. But there's actually a beautiful natural order that is contained in everything once we get out of our own way, once we stop controlling and manipulating the world around us. And that is the language of the universe, is energy. And the mind gets out of the way and you can allow yourself to flow with the frequencies. You will find very quickly how life's greater current takes hold of you. And there are no fears and no worries and no baggage from the past that you have to contend with. It's a state of pure presence and anticipation and curiosity. And let's see what happens next. There's an integral experience of continuity, of evolution, of the impermanence of life. When I first came across this phrase, this concept of everything is impermanent, I remember it was depressing. It was a downer. I didn't want to take that on. I was like, no, I don't want to lose things. I don't want to acknowledge that people will leave their bodies, that things you have worked for will dissolve, that things you achieve will fade. There was much resistance in me to understanding that the deeper meaning of that, which is don't cling in the first place. It'll make your life easier because everything does fade, but only to make room for new, for the next moment, for the next experience of aliveness. It's not about events or milestones or even miracles. It's just to be continuously connected to the aliveness, your own aliveness. And that ultimately is a connection to higher self, higher truth, greater consciousness, and all the things we struggle with. There is no room for those once you establish that within yourself. In pure presence, there's just not enough time to worry about anything. It is as it is, and you get ready for the next moment. You move on. There's no space to be full of fear. Most of our fear is not actually fear to something real. It's fear of what we imagine. And then when it comes to manifestation, I often hear people, oh, you're just imagining that. Well, if you're imagining your fear and experiencing anxiety, that's real. Then why don't you also imagine an amazing life full of alignment and abundance and make that your reality? You can't be selective there, especially when you choose to believe the things that pull you down and make you depressed. You may as well let those go and believe in the things that lift you up. Sacred leadership is not about creating a world that flatters the leader. It is about aligning a world that reflects natural law. A leader who serves their own vision creates followers. A leader who serves others creates leaders in their own right. And this is what happens when you carry yourself in that light of alignment and you inspire others through that state of connectedness. They then recognize that same essence, that same connectedness within themselves. And they become their own leaders. They become their own source of joy and confidence and trust and creativity. It's their own ability to step into the co-creative flow and to consult with their higher self. Of course, it's all pointing back to the same place, but we have our own journey, our own experience of that. So by being yourself, by holding space for your experience of that, others will recognize that in themselves, because you're not special. I'm not special. We're not unique. We don't own consciousness. There's no trademark that limits it to us. Everyone has this connection within themselves, available at all times. And it's ridiculous how close it is and how much effort we exert to keep ourselves separate from it. It really is right there. Source is like atmospheric pressure, and it's around us everywhere at all times, ready to come into our being if we just get out of the way, if we just stop resisting, just come out of our heads and into our bodies to feel the resonance of our aliveness. With that said, I think we're going to go straight to our meditation, helping us come out of our heads and into our bodies. Thought awareness, which is what we'll do today, is the single most important exercise to become aware of your thoughts. If you're not aware of them, then they'll own you. All of us can sit there for a moment and go, ah, there's a thought. Ah, there's another thought. That's fine, but when a thought that carries a larger, a heavier charge, especially a negative charge, comes along, then we get pulled into it. So we all have the ability to observe our thoughts, but we have to strengthen our awareness muscle to deal with the more challenging thoughts that have a more weight to them. And for that, we have to practice, just like going to the gym. We practice and strengthen our awareness muscle. And the simplest way to do that is just to observe the mind drifting. Observe it drifting whenever we try to put our attention on any one thing. It could be a spot on the wall, it could be a finger, it could be a candle, it could be the license plate on the car in front of you. The simplest thing, of course, is the breath. The breath is always there. It's with you in each situation, and it's so central and so basic, and it metaphorically represents the expansion and collapse, the exhale and the inhale of the universe, of life, on the impermanence, the continuity of things, the intelligence that silently and quietly works behind the scenes, that gives all of our organs instructions of how to work and process and convert external stimuli into organized thought and into chemistry and into our physical being. To not lose ourselves in that, but to stay aware of that is the objective. All right. With that said, we're going to go into our thought awareness meditation today. Finding a comfortable position, spine straight, bones stacked. And with your eyes and mouth closed, bring all of your attention on the incoming and outgoing breath at the entrance of your nostrils. There's a sensitive area below the nostrils and above the upper lip where you can feel the touch of your breath. And if you have trouble locating the breath, you may breathe slightly harder once or twice. And then return to natural breath, normal breath. Let the detail of your breath pull you in closer, closer into the present moment. If your breath is shallow, let it be shallow. If your breath is deep, let it be deep. If it's more in the left nostril, let it be the left nostril. If it's more in the right nostril, let it be the right nostril. And if it's in both nostrils, let it be both. Notice the temperature of the incoming breath. Notice the temperature of the outgoing breath. And notice if there's a difference. Notice the pace of the incoming breath. Notice the pace of the outgoing breath. And notice if there's a difference. Notice the length of the incoming breath. Notice the length of the outgoing breath. And notice if there's a difference. Notice the pause at the end of your inhale. Notice the pause at the end of your exhale. And notice if there's a difference. And whenever you find that your mind has wandered, simply notice it. And without frustration, without dismay, but with full acceptance, bring your attention back to the incoming and outgoing breath at the entrance of your nostrils. Natural breath. Normal breath. Observe your breath as it is, without wanting it to be different. Now gradually expand your awareness into your body. And notice any flow of subtle sensations throughout your body, from the top of your head down to the tips of your toes, from the tips of your toes to the top of your head. Just feel the aliveness wherever it makes itself known. Keep expanding your awareness to the clothes that you're wearing, the surface that you're sitting on, the weight of your body. And whenever you're ready, gradually blinking open your eyes, noticing your environment, noticing yourself in your environment, noticing your peace, your presence, and your stillness. Stillness is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of consciousness, one consciousness. And with that, I thank you for your presence. Stay connected. Check out the upcoming retreats. And we'll see you next time.